Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 7 of Apple TV's Foundation, entitled Mysteries and Martyrs. Now, there's a few mysteries that I think are presented, there's a few mysteries that I think are solved, and I think the martyr situation is pretty clear. But I'm going to go over a couple of things from the title, because I feel like the title really integrates well with the content that we saw in this episode. So in talking about the title, I'm probably going to end up talking about most of the episode, but I'm going to go over first, just raise a couple of questions, like some of the mysteries that I think were presented in this episode. The first is what's going to happen with Dawn and Azura, which I'm going to talk about my thoughts on each of these mysteries later in the video, but I just kind of want to run them down first. What's going to happen with Day walking the spiral? I think that's going to be, hopefully that happens next episode, because I think that's going to be really cool however that plays out. Is Dusk going to catch on to what's happening with Dawn? Dawn pointed out a whole lot of like minor differences between him and Day and Dusk. Is that going to be discovered? Because Dusk seems to be kind of catching on. Most importantly, though, and this is a mystery that I think we kind of had answered, is what happened with Harry Seldon. We already learned, I think it was 2 episodes ago, that the original plan was for Ra's to kill Harry. Then Ra's hops on that transport, ends up on the ship that Gale is currently on, and that's where they reunite. We already learned that a couple of weeks ago. But in this episode, we finally return to that scene. I think it was the end of episode 5, where Gale discovers this Harry, projection or hologram. At the time I didn't know what it was. But we return to that scene this week, and we find out that it is a projection, that Harry's consciousness was uploaded into, I think, the knife that was used to kill him, Race's knife. And that's why when Gale was trying to like jimmy that door open, that the knife kind of like zoomed into like a portion of like a door panel or something, and how the doors open, it had something with Harry ingrained in it. He had his projection, he had his consciousness uploaded into this computer, which is the projection that we see. It's Harry's consciousness. And we find out that he did this because he has some sort of disease that he inherited, that once it, kicks in or goes into overdrive, it causes a steep mental decline. So his plan was to kill himself and have Ra's, get out of there, and that was going to be that. And then he would live on as a martyr. The martyr of the title is Harry. He said something like, he could live on as a myth, and she's like, you have an ego, but not like that. Like, what the fuck? And that's how we find out about the disease that causes the mental degradation, and why he wanted to make himself a martyr, so that way he could live on as he was, rather than ending up on Terminus and slowly, becoming not really useful at all, and being someone that the people that no longer can look to or admire, they look at him as like, okay, what are we going to do with this guy? So him being a martyr kind of allows him to live on in that present state. So, but what ends up happening is that, well, as we saw, Gale interrupts. She sees what happens. Ra's gives her the knife, puts her in the stowaway thing. Ra's is now executed, supposedly, and that's how we ended up where we are. And I think the climax of the episode is that we find out that essentially Gale has this whole time kind of been seeing things before they happen. And I like how they kind of run through some of those moments that happened earlier in the season that we might not have looked at them as like, hey, could she see into the future, or can she see things before they happen? Like, very minor stuff. But then they run off like 3 or 4 things that she kind of saw right before they happened, or heard right before they happened. And she says that's essentially how she was compelled to go to Harry's room, and that's how she saw what happened. And we already knew also that Harry wanted to separate those two, but he knew that Ra's wouldn't, leave with him on his own, because he was going to stay with Gale, which is why the plan was changed to have Ra's kill Harry, so that Ra's would have to leave. So we already knew that as well, but Gale found that out in this episode. So lots of mysteries. We now know that Harry is the martyr, and I think this episode was, we learned a lot in this episode, which I think will satisfy a lot of people who feel like the pacing has been slow. I also noticed, though, and I think this is why I feel like people aren't customarily just saying, like, I love this show, or like it's a widespread critical acclaim for the show. And I'm wondering if the reason for that is that even though we might learn a lot from week to week, I feel like we still don't know where this is going. And I think that's a hindrance when you get 7 episodes into, let's say, I don't know if it's a 10 episode season, but assuming it is, we only have 3 episodes left. And we're still in a kind of a place where we don't really know where this is going. And when I say where this is going, I don't mean, like we need to see everything before it happens. But I kind of feel like we don't really know what direction this show is trying to lead us in. So like, give an example. Right away from Game of Thrones, you can kind of tell that ultimately the end game is who's going to end up on the Iron Throne. And there's all sorts of political machinations and backstabbings, literal backstabbings, and all kinds of things that cause diversions on the way to ultimately where we end up in the finale, which is finding out who's going to end up on the Iron Throne. And then also we learn there's the battle between the living and the dead. I don't really know where this is going, this show. And I feel like a lack of not direction, but a lack of at least being able to understand where you're going. So I guess not direction, but destination. I think that might be hindering the perception of the show, because people are going to feel like it drags and they're going to feel like it's slow if through 7 episodes they don't really know what the point is. So like we've got a lot of information, like we know what's going on with Gale and Harry now, but where is this going? Like we know that now he's dead. Like we know the ultimate goal of what the Foundation is for, but as far as the show goes, I don't think we know what direction that's going. I don't think we know what direction the Anacreon Salvor plot is going. The situation with the Emperors, I feel like there's too much where it's kind of like we don't have enough to be invested, I think is the best way to put it. And I think that is what's harming the show, at least in the eyes of the public perception. I enjoy it quite a bit, but I also acknowledge that it does feel kind of like I'm not really invested, even though I'm spent a lot of time. We've all spent approximately 7 hours, give or take, with these characters. But since we don't really know what the point is, I feel like that kind of like lowers your investment, and thus kind of makes it feel like the show is moving slower because there's no end goal in sight. So I wonder if that's kind of what could be causing, I think, a less than stellar reception for the show. I feel like Apple's not even pushing it that much anymore. Like, it's the day the show comes on, I go on Apple TV. I would expect Foundation to be prominently placed on the landing page for Apple TV, and it almost never is. At least on the website. I go on the website because I watch it on my computer in my office where I record these videos. And, I had to go through, like, it had like a banner thing at the top, and it showed this show Swagger that premiered today. And I'm clicking right to go through, to swipe through the images. And I had to go like 4 images down before I got to the Foundation one. And I'm like, why would you not have the show that I thought was meant to be like the face of the network, kind of the face of the streaming service, kind of like buried in a bunch of other stuff on the day of a new episode release? So I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if this show is going to get the support that it needs from Apple or from the fans to make it last this 8-season arc that they have planned. But I like it. I'm enjoying it. It is not fucking with Dune. I've watched Dune 3 times now, and Dune is fucking incredible. I love Dune. Like, even if you watch my video about Dune, I presented a couple of issues that I had, and on subsequent watchings, I realized this film greatly rewards subsequent watching. So like I learned more and more, and even the issues that I had in that video, I don't have anymore. But that's neither here nor there. My point is that I wonder if Foundation is going to get what it needs from both the fans and from Apple to keep it going. But I am enjoying it. So we spend time in this episode in 3 other places. So we hit basically everywhere in this episode. One, we spend time with Salvor and her crew and the Anacreons searching for Invictus, the world destroyer ship. And again, I think this is kind of indicative of what I was saying about not being able to get invested because you don't know what the end game is. We find out now that the Anacreons' end game is to use Invictus to destroy Trantor. What a convoluted way to get there. Like, think about, like, we started seeing clues of the Anacreons on Terminus in maybe like the second episode, maybe. I can't remember. But the whole process of the Anacreons getting on Terminus, the whole interrogation of, why are you here? And it's just, oh, we want your navigation system. And how it's become like, okay, how they attacked Terminus, how they had the conversation about the navigation systems, how the Anacreons took over, the whole plan to, like, okay, now we need to get this emperor here. Like, their plan has unfolded so slowly, and I don't mean that as a knock. I'm just saying that as facts. Like, it's unfolded slowly, where we learn little bits of their plan each week to ultimately just arrive at, we're gonna use this ship to destroy Trantor. like I don't know. I feel like that's part of the, I don't want to say the problem with the show, but it's a whole lot of twists and turns to arrive at a very simple place. It's a simple revenge plot that was just a convoluted plan to get there. And I don't even mean convoluted in an insulting way. I just mean, like, there's a lot of different machinations and wheels turning and all sorts of different things that have to happen to make sure that they can pull this plan off. But we're getting to this point very slowly. But I also feel like these final 3 episodes are gonna, like, be pretty action packed. They're gonna use the Invictus. We find out that the Invictus is essentially a ghost ship. It's been missing for 700 years, and that's because it has the ability to jump from one place to the other. And apparently the crew lost control of it or whatever. It started jumping to random coordinates. It supposedly, because they don't know for sure, jumped into a place where maybe they don't have the ability to use comms. And then everybody kind of, like, dies off, and now the ship just jumps randomly every now and then, and they got to get control of it before it jumps again and puts them in some random fucking place where they could probably die or die quickly or die slowly. They got to get control of it, and then they can jump straight to Trantor, and it's a wrap before anybody even knows what's happening. So, cool plan. We did take a long time to get here, but it was an interesting setting for this episode for Salvor and her crew. I like the jump over to Invictus, having to do it manually, and the whole idea of, like, anything bigger than 2 meters in diameter can be seen by their rail guns and how that goes left. But more on that later. I have a comment on that I'm going to save for my thoughts at the end. We also spend time on Maiden, which is the moon that the Zephyr Halima, and I can't remember the other Zephyr's name because she wasn't in this episode, where they're kind of, like, competing to become Proxima. And we find out that after that speech from last week that Zephyr Halima is now the front runner. And so Day kind of comes down to kind of confront her and say, essentially, what do you want? In addition to the desalinization system, I'm going to offer you, I think he says, like some sort of satellite security system so that you can have safety. And she basically says she wants the end of the genetic dynasty. And then she delivers what I think is one of the doper lines of the episode. I'm going to read it because I wrote it down here. She says the Empire is the reverberations of a dead man's ego, and that the soulless creature cannot recognize itself. I thought that was such a dope fucking line, man. I was like, man, she really burned this dude. But clearly he took it to heart, because he goes, okay, I'm a soulless creature that can't recognize myself. Well, then maybe what are they called? The mother, the 3, did I write it down? The 3, I want to say I think it was the three mothers or something like that. Whatever God it is they worship, will let her be the judgment. And he decides that he's going to walk this thing called the spiral to prove that Zephyr Halima is wrong about him. And I think that's really cool too. I can't wait to see that. We see the effects of what this walk is. So the spiral is like a walk that these people go through when a Proxima dies, and it's like it takes you out. Like, people are coming back looking frail and depleted, scrawny, thin, malnourished. People are dying from it. A guy went blind from it. It's a walk that is difficult to survive. And when we see what it does to regular people, I wonder if it's almost going to backfire, that, Day's going to do this to prove, like, hey, look at me. I'm going to walk this, and I'm going to get the approval of the 3 mothers or whatever they're called. And then he maybe survives this, like, virtually unscathed. And be like, yeah, this is kind of proof that you're not human, guy. Like, I wonder if that's going to backfire on him. But I'm really interested to see where that's going. Him and Demerzel kind of had a little dust up that I wonder if anything's going to come out of that. I did hear that there's a moment involving Demerzel in episode 8 that's going to be really impactful. I don't know what it is, but there's a podcast that I listened to and they interviewed David Goyer about it, and he mentioned that kind of briefly. So really looking forward to seeing what happens there. And then lastly, we are on Trantor with Brother Dawn and Azura, and essentially they meet up, they have sex. She offers him something that can help with his color blindness, and he points out all these different ways in which he's different from his quote-unquote brothers. And she proposes that they leave. Says we could change your face, we could remove the nanobots from your blood, and nanobites, bots, whatever. Whatever identifying shit is in his blood, they can do that. And we find out another mystery that's revealed, or presented, I should say, is that there are replicas of them that can step in if anything were to happen to any of the three of them. And let me see if I have this in, nope, I don't, good. This kind of leads me into my final thoughts on this episode and on this video. I wonder if, well, let me give my evidence. We've twice now seen Brother Dawn take off his bracelet that provides his shield. He took it off when they were standing on the ledge last week, and he took it off again so they could have sex. We also know now that there are replicas that could step in to replace him or any of them if anything were to happen to the three of them. I'm wondering if this whole thing with Azura has been her playing the long game, similar to what Farah's doing with the Anacreons and Salvor. Is Azura maybe like an Anacreon or someone who was hurt or damaged in some way, or affiliated with someone who was hurt or damaged in some way by Empire, and now she's playing the long game, gaining his trust, will a third time get him to remove his shield and then kill him in a revenge plot, because then that makes for like a cool plot twist that maybe a lot of people wouldn't see coming. And then it also makes it so that you don't even have to worry about the consequences because you establish that you have a replica that could just come in for him. So I wonder if that's where they're ultimately going with Dawn. I feel like that's a little obvious. Like I can't say obvious if I'm just figuring it out at the end of episode 7, but it's being heavily telegraphed. So if you're somebody who's kind of looking for that, that could happen. But and the only reason I kind of hedge on this prediction is that I think it'd be really cool if they did change his face up and remove the identifiers from his blood and have him go onto Trantor and like have him leave the palace. Like, I think that would be a cool, like the adventures of Brother Day as somebody who's not seen as a god. Like, I think that'd be a pretty cool angle to take. So I like both of those directions. Well, I like the direction of him leaving a little bit more, but I also like me being right. So I kind of like the idea of her killing him, and this was something that she's been setting up this whole time to gain his trust and get revenge. I think that'd be cool too. And then the last thing that I want to talk about, my last thought, is when they jump from, when they being Salvor and Farah and all them jump from whatever Hugo's ship toward Invictus, Hugo doesn't make it. And I felt like they put a lot of effort into letting us know that Hugo and Salvor had something going on. And I feel like his quote unquote death, because I do feel like he's going to return at some point, was very underwhelming. It was so fast. There was they had to keep moving right away. And I felt like they built that character up to mean a little bit more than someone whose death is treated as like someone who you just saw earlier in the episode. You know, when you have a show where you have like 5 or 6 characters and you all know who they are, and then for some reason in that episode, some random character that you don't know is inserted, and you go, oh, that person's probably gonna die. I feel like that's the kind of death that Hugo got, but that's not the kind of backstory that he got. Like we're meant to look at him as more important, but they killed him as if he was just like an extra or something like that. So I found that to be kind of odd. But those are my thoughts on the episode. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you get the notifications. I'll be back on Monday with Succession season episode 3, Insecure episode 2. And I am currently starting a first watch of The Sopranos. And the plan for that is for me to do a video after every season. So that would be 7 videos. Season 6 is in 2 parts, but they're full season length. So I'm counting it as 7 seasons. So that'll be 7 videos for The Sopranos. I just started that. As you can see that coming. I still have a retro reviews that I got to do for Dark City. And there's so many other things coming. So many shows premiering soon. The Eternals is coming out on November 5th. Hawkeye, just all kinds of things coming. So make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. Let me know what you think of the episode. Let me know what you thought of my analysis in the comments. And I'll see you guys next week for episode 8. Peace.